Hi, Vabsa here. For a while now, I've been researching a topic that probably has nothing to do with me, but it really got me hooked, and that is how can we design mini games. Mini games in general are really fascinating to me. They help you make up for the weaknesses of the game development genre, like the game development itself. They help you diversify the gameplay of your games, and they help you bring new things that into your games that otherwise wouldn't be possible in your main game. Now, before we start, we need to establish that there are indeed two kind of mini games. For me, at the very least, I classify them into kind of two types. First one is what I called the side games. These games are what we call games inside games. The game that you might find in the world of a game. For example, you find those gambling games in Pokemon, that poker games and bowling games in the GTA and Red Dead Redemption games, and a lot of those simple games that you can optionally play that probably never play a part in the lore, maybe lore, but in the main storyline and gameplay of the game, and you can skip them and never notice. The other one is the mini games that actually play a part in the progression of a game, like the mini game in Stardew Valley, the fishing mini game. It plays a really important part because you can get resources from it, you can get fishes, you can find items. So it's a really heavy part of the gameplay. Well, of course, there are the mini games that you can play while the game was loading, the loading mini games, and Sony somehow thought that it would be a really good idea to patent it. Thank you, Sony. Appreciate it. Now, before we start thinking about how do we design a mini game for your game, a really big thing yet you need to consider is that mini games are games inside games. The types of mini games that you create is really important. I classified them into two more types, but it's just a rough type, so don't really consider it to be really definite. I'm just classifying it in roughly. The first type I think is the ones that do play a role in the gameplay, but they let's see, how can I put it? Maybe like those gambling games. You can earn money from them, but those are simple games inside games. What I mean is that they are standalone themselves. Like, for example, if a game has a Pac-Man minigame, and you can actually, that's a really big part of the game, like, it's a really important part, but it really doesn't represent another task. You'll understand it more when I tell about this second type. Now think about a game where your player actually crafts a sword. Now, you do not just want your player to like click a button and start crafting, because your game is really heavily relied on forging and stuff. So a really good idea would be to create a mini game that actually gives the player the feel of forging a sword. In this case, you create a mini game what I call a representative mini game. These are simple mini games that you create to represent a real life task that otherwise the player wouldn't be able to do in the game world due to the technical limitations of the video game media. Of course, you can never forge a weapon inside a game because you can never get that feeling. But what you can do is you can create a mini game that lets you mimic those same emotions that you might have while forging a sword. For example, you can create a minigame that lets test the player's precision and accuracy and things like that. Same things that they will require while forging a sword. Of course, you don't really need to go that in depth. Some games just use a little Candy Crush clone to make a mini game. I mean, come on, it's too overused, to be honest. Now it's time we discussed something what I called the minigame problem. We really need to discuss this because it's kind of a question of whether you should spend time to design a minigame or not. If you have played mobile games, you must know that a simple type of minigame, what I call that the arrow moving on bar game. You must have watched it on somewhere, definitely. Like there's a red green bar and there's a little arrow moving from left to right, and you have to like precisely click on the screen at the time where the arrow is on the green area so you don't hit the red area. To be honest, I freaking hate that. I mean, it's insanely, and I'm just not kidding, it's insanely overused. And whenever now I just see a game developer using that in their game, I think only thing that comes to my mind is like, man, they spend time creating all these cool graphics, audio work, and they could go a little bit more creative and create a little bit of a creative minigame. They just added that, what I call the precision bar. I mean, you have watched it in the GTA bowling game, in the Taken bowling games. Like, to be honest, whenever you see a game about sports, the bar is there. You want to play a cricket game, go in Play Store, download any game, and the bar is there. You want to play a badminton game, go on Play Store and or Steam, download any game, it's gonna have the bar. You want to play a table tennis game, heck, when I used to have a local Nokia phone from my father, it had a table tennis game. I really loved it, but it just had that bar. So what I'm trying to say is that it's freaking overused, and you can use it too. It's so common that people that aren't like me just don't feel bad to add this, and I'm pretty sure that your player probably won't mind you adding that. So if you're not feeling like designing a whole new mechanic or whole new system for your minigame, just add the bar, and you can just leave the video now. Okay, bye, see you next time. Okay, let's move on. Okay, let's get into it, into designing your minigame. The first and the most important question that you need to ask yourself is, do your game needs a minigame? There are several games, and I will say it again, there are a bajillion of games that don't have minigames, and their gameplay is quite diverse. The reason why you would want to add a minigame is really important, because that actually defines everything, almost literally everything. How much time would you want to put in the game? How long should the game be? How cool the graphics should be? Everything is determined by the reason you want to add a minigame. Like I said, some people add it to diversify the gameplay, so the player wouldn't just get bored by repeating some things. Some games have a gameplay that's too repeated, so the developers add side games like the Taken games. The gameplay is mostly literally an hour game for me. To be honest, if I don't have a friend to play a Taken game, I cannot play the game for like an hour and then just completely regret ever playing the game. That's why I never bought a Taken game. Just played it in a friend's house. Oh my god. And just never bought a game. So that's a really good thing to consider. Why would you want to add a mini game? Because the only reason most people just add is to diversify the gameplay, so the players have more things to play. Of course, that the thing that is mostly in my mind in creating this video is what I call the representative mini games. The mini games that are created to represent real life tasks inside games. If that's what your reason, I think that's the best reason to have and to continue this video. So let's move on. In terms of creating a mini game, we really need to understand the nature of mini games and games in general. Games are things that make you feel new things. Games let you feel environments that you have never seen. They let you feel emotions that you might have never felt. They let you experience things that aren't really possible in reality, like horror games. They aren't ghosts. I hope so. I hope there's no ghost in down my bed, please. And nearly the biggest thing in games is new feelings. That's why most of the time unique games ever come on top, because they give you new feelings. That's why most indie games just fail, because they just give you the repeating feeling. So what I'm trying to say is that games in general are to make you feel unique emotions. Mini games, however, or what people call it hyper casual games, are a little bit of old school games. These games aren't really diverse. They don't really make you emotional, connect with characters, all that bullshit stuff. They literally test your simple, what I call mini skills. What I mean by mini skill is your reaction time. How fast can you move your mouse? How fast can click object? uh, can you remember a rhythm? All of those simple human things that can be achieved with practice and all of that good stuff. So understanding that with your mini game, you don't really need to create a diverse gameplay. What you need is to understand what kind of emotion you want your player to have while playing your mini game. That's the thing I discussed before. For example, for a forging game, the player needs accuracy, like how the amount of force they want to put in to their hammer shot and all of that good stuff. So understanding what kind of skills you want your player to have is really, really important. Now that you know what skills your player needs to have, let's get into the technical stuff. But really important in minigames is controls. Minigames are called minigames because their controls are minimal. What's the boundary line? How much is too much? To be honest, it really depends. First of all, the platform you are working is really, really, really important, and I cannot stress this enough. Platform is the really important thing when you creating mini games. There are hundreds of game developers who create really creative mini games, and in the end they realize that our mini game is really creative, but it utilizes the something that everything hates, the whole internet hates: mouse. No, not that those mouse, our computer mouse, because console games don't have mouse. Most of the mini games that exist in this world don't utilize mouse, so they just want to be so simple that everyone can play it. You can play it on mobile, you can play it on PC, and you can play it on the platform which earns the most, consoles. And yes, consoles are the elephant in the room. They are the shittiest things that are making the game development industry go to hell, because to be honest, people cannot create creative things because console limitations. Oh my god, I hate consoles, because how can play Call of Duty on a console? If you can play Call of Duty on a console, please hit me up. I want to shot you in the head. Okay, that was too much. Okay, back to the topic. What I mean is that for most of the minigame, the optimal controls, what I think, are a joystick, alternatively for PC, your WASD keys or the arrow keys, and 2 buttons. At max, you want your player to have both of their hands utilized. You don't want them to pull out their other 2 hands as well. Minigames are just in general simple games, so try not to make it too complex so the player just thinks that it's just completely new game. So if you're adding a bajillion of what I say controls, that just create a new game, damn it. Now, feeling replication. As I discussed it before, let me just stress it a little bit more, that you want your player to feel a certain kind of feeling while playing a minigame. Minigames are too complex, so most of the time you test a player's simple kind of skill. Let me give you another example. If you're creating a fishing game, most of the time in fishing in general, you just go to fishing, you need a certain amount of skills, a certain amount of feeling. For example, you need to be patient so fishes come, and then you need to be active at all times. That because a fish comes, it like eats your bait and it goes away if the hook doesn't get stuck in its mouth. I'm just saying it in general. So you need to be active, at the same time you need to be, what I say, precise, then you need to be patient. You need to replicate these feelings into a mini game. Watch how Stardew Valley does this, a really cool but different way. I mean, there's no connection between the minigame and real fishing, but somehow you really feel that you are indeed fishing. Then, of course, the Minecraft fishing game is really lovely. I think it's one of the best fishing games. It really lets you feel the real essence of fishing. Of course, a 2D game cannot really do that, but I think at the dimension you are working on doesn't really matter in terms of game design. At this point, you must have a lot of puzzle pieces. Let's just discuss them back. First, you need why do you need to add a mini game. The why is really important as it opens up more answers, like how much effort do you want to put in the game, how much long the game should be, how good should it look, and a bunch of other things. The why also opens up the significance of the mini game. The significance means that how much does the game contribute to the gameplay. Now that you know the significance, it also opens up the answers of more like how big the size of the game. That's just more contributing to the previous answers, but it opens up things like what kind of feelings you want to replicate, what kind of feel do you want to give the player. If the game is just a small little mini game, you don't really need to matter too much. So then you'll learn from the feel, you will learn like what controls you should use. Of course, if you have decided what controls you should use beforehand, it will let you understand the other questions. Then that will open up what kind of feeling you can replicate. For example, if you want to create a precision game, it will like use one control because you just need to click one button, and that'll bring you closer to your answer even more. Then a lot of different questions will pop up, and all of these questions will give your answer more clarity. Small questions like these will help you and go toward the blurry vision of your minigame. And once you have a good enough design, a good enough vision of what you want to create, I think that's when I'll have to leave you, because from there I don't think anyone on the YouTube, on the internet, maybe no books, no one can help you. There you need to use your own creativity. And of course, the biggest factor for a minigame is simply its parent game, the game that the minigame exists within. You can never create a minigame first and then just replicate into other game. It will definitely suck ass. So just consider your game. That's the biggest takeaway. You need to consider the game that you're making the game mini game for. So that's just the biggest lesson I can give you. And yeah, I know this video is quite messy. It really doesn't have any clear answers. I just wanted to put my thoughts in front of you, what I think is important, what you need to consider. And that's it for today's video, and I'll see you in the next one.